Today, we're diving into a rather intriguing collection from the British museum known as the Secretum, which housed sexually graphic items from various cultures. Can you explain the origins of this collection and why it was specifically established?
The secretum, meaning hidden away in Latin, began to take shape in 1865. Prior to that, items with erotic imagery were already part of the museum's holdings, collected from various donors. However, it was George Witt's donation of 434 phallocentric artifacts that prompted the official creation of the secretum to house these types of items.
It's fascinating to consider the scope of the collection. The artifacts span across cultures and epochs. Where did many of these items originate from, and what do they represent?
The collection includes items from ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, medieval England, and even Japan and India. These artifacts often depict fertility and various aspects of human sexuality, reflecting the different cultural approaches to these themes. Many are related to the worship of Priapus, for instance, emphasizing fertility and sexuality in pre-Christian traditions.
There seems to be a significant moral undertone in how these items were treated historically. Why were they kept segregated from the main collection?
Yes, the separation largely stemmed from Victorian prudery. The museum officials believed that displays of sexuality could disrupt public morality. As a result, this collection was accessible only to select scholars and clergy, which perpetuated the idea that such material was too dangerous for general public consumption.
So, why did the British Museum feel it necessary to maintain this sort of secrecy around these items?
The rationale was twofold. It was partly about maintaining an image of respectability for the museum, while also believing that only certain educated individuals could rightly interpret such items. There was a paternalistic notion that the weaker members of society could not be trusted to handle this material economically.
What about the significance of the secretum as a historical artifact in itself?
It serves as a case study in how societal values influence the curation of cultural heritage. Critics argue that the decision to label items as obscene lacks academic grounding. By removing them from their original cultural context, they were instead viewed through a Victorian lens, which distorts their meaning.
That's an essential point. There's a tension in curatorial practices between academic freedom and moral considerations. How did the museum address this tension over time?
Over the years, the British Museum began to recognize the importance of these artifacts and integrated more sexually explicit items into public displays. By the 1970s, items previously locked away started to emerge in exhibitions, reflecting a shift towards a more open discussion about sexuality in art.
That's a significant evolution. Can you share what happened in the late 20th century regarding the secretum's items?
Beginning in 1912, items were gradually released from the secretum and given to applicable departments within the museum. By 2005, the last remnant of this collection was transferred out, showcasing a complete transition in how the museum approached this material.
I understand now that while the museum sought to rid itself of the collection's restrictive reputation, it simultaneously embraced these artifacts' value in understanding human sexuality across cultures. What does this say about current attitudes toward such material?
Today, there's a greater appreciation for the role that sexuality plays in cultural expression. The understanding that artifacts can be examined and appreciated beyond the lens of moral judgment presents a more inclusive narrative about history and sexuality.
In closing, the journey of the secretum is a reflection of changing societal norms and attitudes. How should future curators learn from this history?
Future curators should approach collections with an understanding of the societal context in which they were created. It's important to recognize biases when presenting cultural artifacts and ensure that they are displayed with the intent to educate and foster a deeper understanding of human experiences.